while they were, carting everything out and vehicles were moving in, we made our way down there and we spoke with some representatives from Beam. And as New York State municipalities, higher education, Executive Order 22 states that all light-duty vehicles will need to be zero emission by 2035, and all medium and heavy-duty zero emission by 2040. And we're all kind of in the same boat where that sounds great and we're all for it, but there's an infrastructure component that comes with that with a very big price tag. So what Andy is going to speak to you about is some technology that they develop that can help some folks get into that Executive Order 22 compliance without necessarily laying out that enormous price tag that comes with infrastructure. And as I came to know, New York City, which does a fantastic job of being innovators and breaking through and doing some of these things first, when I found out that New York City had deployed some of these devices, I asked Andy if he could talk to us a little bit about that today, because if New York City can deploy something, then most certainly just about anyone else can, because they have some of the toughest conditions around. So without further ado, Andy from Beam Global. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. And hello, everyone from the New York State Parking and Transportation Authority. It's delightful to talk with you all here today. I'm actually based out here on the West Coast, out here in San Diego, California. Just a quick introduction. My name is Andy Ike, and I am the Clean Mobility Sales Manager for Beam Global. And Beam Global, for those that are not aware, we are based in San Diego, California, and we describe ourselves as a sustainable technology innovation company. We've been in business for about 18 years. So we've been around for a little while now here at this point. And we really specialize in rapidly deployable, solar-powered, off-grid electric vehicle charging solutions, just like the one you can actually see here in my background. So as George mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit more today about the work that we've done with New York City, which is really exciting. So I'm going to talk with you guys a little bit about that and just kind of, why they're using solar off-grid EV charging, particularly, how they are using it to overcome several challenges that they have encountered as they have been undergoing this massive fleet electrification initiative. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. Just for a little bit of background. So for those that are not aware, New York City, they're in the process of transitioning their entire municipal fleet over to electric vehicles. And so their goal is to have all city vehicles be zero emission vehicles by 2038. All light duty and medium duty on-road vehicles should be zero emissions by 2035. And then they're looking to have their emergency and specialized trucks no later than 2040. So while those dates, may seem far away, they're quickly approaching, from that side of things. And so one of their more short-term goals is that, they're looking to eliminate half of the fleet's 2015 greenhouse gas emissions levels by 2025, which obviously that is coming up right next year there from that side of things. So that's much more quickly approaching. And then in the process of, while they're doing that fleet electrification, New York City also has a goal to install several thousand publicly available electric vehicle charging solutions. So obviously New York City, they are both feet in here with EV charging and with the electric vehicles there from that side of things. And, they're really their first challenge that they had encountered, when they were looking to initiate this fleet electrification plan was the infrastructure aspect, as George was just touching upon. So we were approached by New York City back in 2015 timeframe, and we did our very first deployment of our EV ARC system, which is our solar off-grid charging solution, back in 2016. And really the first thing that drove them towards our solution was just the time and cost to install traditional infrastructure to charge their electric vehicles. So as many of you are, I'm sure, aware, New York City and many large cities in the Northeast have old, dated traditional infrastructure. And often what that means is that if they want to upgrade that infrastructure, it's going to take a very long time, several months, if not years in some cases. The cost to install that infrastructure is significant as well, too, because for many of the locations where New York City wants to add EV charging at their fueling sites for their fleet vehicles, they need to do things like switchgear upgrades and transformers, all of which can cost several thousands of dollars. And New York City even told us that, they are looking at installs that often take them 18 to 24 months long to complete from start to finish. That's when that project is first handed to the project manager, to when that charging station is actually physically in the ground, connected to the grid, and charging cars. And then the other thing that New York City was frankly fearful for as they were doing this fleet electrification process was high utility rates. And, the cost of fueling their electric vehicles with electricity was going to be significant, because they knew that, at many of the times when they were looking to charge those cars, they were going to be running into demand surcharges, just dealing with generally rising electricity prices like many other people are across the country. And so with our EV ARC solution, they really saw this as a great fit that just basically allowed them to take their traditional infrastructure project out of the equation. So with this solar off-grid solution that we deploy for the city, instead of going through this, 18 to 24 month long traditional infrastructure process where you have permitting, construction, electrical work, and infrastructure upgrades, this solar off-grid solution instead would arrive on site about 90 days after they ordered it. And when it arrives on site, it arrives fully assembled with the level 2 electric vehicle charger of their choice already installed at our factory, so that ultimately once the solar off-grid systems get on site, they're off the truck, placed in the parking space where they live, and then charging cars in just about 2 to 3 hours after they get there on site. So it just saves them significant costs there from that front, instead of going through a traditional infrastructure project all the time, the hassle and interruption that comes with it. And then the other thing they're also considering is, the long-term cost savings of not paying utility rates. That's really where it got interesting for New York City, was that, with our system, since it's off-grid, it never generates a utility bill. So there's a significant long-term cost savings that New York City is seeing from just not paying utility rates related to their EV charging for their fleet vehicles. Now, one of the other challenges that New York City was encountering as they were undergoing this fleet electrification process was, New York City's thinking to themselves, if we have an all-electric fleet, and we, heaven forbid, have another, major hurricane like Hurricane Sandy, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. Hurricane Sandy back in, I believe it was 2012, knocked out power for a few days in New York. So New York's thinking to themselves, we have an all-electric fleet, another Hurricane Sandy rolls through, knocks out power for a few days. How do we keep our fleet vehicles running? How do we keep our fleet vehicles still running and providing vital services to our constituents, even in those emergency scenarios when there's no traditional grid power available? So that's one of the unique benefits of the EV ARC, is that, since the EV ARC is off-grid, it makes it a resilient electric vehicle charging solution. So it makes it a solution that will still allow New York City to keep their fleet vehicles running, providing those vital services to their constituents, even if a major blackout or weather event rolls through that knocks out traditional grid power. Now, the other aspect that New York City was thinking about with emergency preparedness and resiliency in general is, besides just charging electric cars if there's a blackout, how do we get power to other vital devices that are powered by electricity when there's no grid power available? So one of the features that we incorporate on New York City's EV ARC is this feature called an emergency power panel. That's what's actually showcased here on the right-hand side of this slide. So basically what the emergency power panel is you got a panel of 120 volt and 240 volt outlets. So you can use that emergency power panel to charge other devices besides just cars when the next blackout happens there from that front. So that just gave them, flexibility with charging other things besides just cars. The other thing to call out about, our latest models of EV ARCs is that with our latest models of EV ARCs, all of our electronics and battery storage is located about 9.5 feet above ground level. So that makes our system fully flood-proof and vandalism-proof up to about 9.5 feet. And our systems are wind rated up to 160 miles per hour sustained wind. So that just really makes them suitable for, those most extreme circumstances there from that side of things. Now, the other thing that New York City is thinking about with their electric vehicle charging is just operational fluidity. So like many large municipal fleets, there's a very fluid sort of operation. And many a times, large municipal fleets are constantly being moved around from location to location. The other thing about large municipal fleets is that a lot of large municipal fleets are located on leased properties. And so installing permanent hardwired traditional infrastructure at those types of locations just gets a little bit tricky. For the leased properties, they may need to go through a negotiation with their landlord to get that infrastructure installed there at that location. That negotiation may go smooth or not so smooth depending on where you are in that lease there from that front. And then, just going back to the permanency of traditional infrastructure, if they end up moving to another location, they would need to go through a traditional infrastructure all over again, so the 18 to 24 months long of all that work that we described before there from that front. So the great thing about the EV ARC solution is that it's a permanent yet transportable solution. So let me break that down a little bit more for you. So each EV ARC system weighs about 12,000 pounds. So they're an extremely robust and heavy system there from that front. And ultimately, these systems can be moved, but there's only a couple of very select specialized pieces of equipment that can move them around. So New York City will sometimes move these systems short distances, like up to a mile or two, just by using a forklift. And then for longer distance moves, moving the systems more than a mile or two, we actually offer a patented hydraulic lift trailer called our ARC Mobility Trailer. That's what's showcased on the right-hand side of this slide. And so New York City actually owns one of these trailers. And so basically what this trailer allows you to do is it allows you to move one of these EV ARC systems with just one single individual with a F450 or Super Duty equivalent. And so ultimately that allows you to rapidly relocate these EV ARC systems. So that's beneficial, just for operational perspective, but it's also beneficial for those emergency situations. So it allows you to relocate these EV ARC systems to locations where they are needed the most for an emergency, locations where they are needed the most from just a demand for EV charging perspective. Ultimately, having a transportable EV charging solution just gives you an incredible amount of flexibility and scalability with your charging infrastructure. So just to quickly summarize before I wrap up, I did save a little bit of time here for questions from the audience, but at this point in time, since our very first deployment with New York City, which was all the way back in 2016, so about 8 years ago, New York City has deployed approximately 160 EV ARC solar off-grid charging systems all throughout the 5 boroughs. And these are primarily utilized for charging fleet vehicles, but New York City is actually beginning to experiment with deploying the solar off-grid systems in public locations as well also too. And we're beginning to see that more and more common with our customers where, sometimes they'll start with buying these systems and using them for an internal fleet application. And then once they get comfortable with the whole concept of solar off-grid charging and how it works, they'll start deploying them in public locations as well also too. And ultimately they've saved an incredible amount of time, resources, and just general hassle by not going through traditional infrastructure projects, not paying utility rates. And then the other thing they really love about we haven't even talked about here is just, they love the fact that our system is a highly visible sustainability initiative. So unlike other sustainability initiatives like, energy savings or water savings, which are obviously fantastic initiatives and they move the needle forward, but it's hard to physically point to those things and tell a story. New York City loves to use, these pieces of equipment as demonstration tools so that, city higher ups and leadership often walk out to these systems with key stakeholders and tell really compelling stories about New York City's commitment to clean transportation, its commitment to renewable energy, its commitment to energy resiliency and emergency preparedness and things like that also too. So that's my spiel for you today, guys. Thank you very much for letting me kind of talk your ears off here for the better part of the last 15 minutes or so. Would love just to kind of open it up, to the audience, if in case there are any kind of questions that we can answer, and we'll go ahead and we'll take it from there, George. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Okay, we have some questions from the audience. So this is Ephraim Tefera from Stony Brook University Parking.
Thank you. My question is there any incentives, be it state or federal funding available to acquire this product?
Great question. So the short answer to your question is yes. So because our system combines a lot of different things out there that there are grants for, there's lots of funding opportunities that customers can utilize to help with lowering the actual out-of-pocket cost of the system. So for private enterprises, like, private companies, you're able to take advantage of some pretty basic incentives. Like, for example, our system is eligible for the federal solar investment tax credit. That's the same solar tax credit you use for rooftop solar, but you can also use it for our system there from that front. There's also a incentive out there called Tax Law 179. It's a basic standard depreciation write-off. So those are two things you'll obviously want to talk to a tax professional about for those items, but those are two immediate things out there for private enterprises. Now, as it relates to maybe government agencies like, local municipalities or state agencies or what have you, there's lots of funding opportunities out there for things like electric vehicle charging. Our system is absolutely eligible for electric vehicle charging grants, but in addition to that, our system is also eligible for renewable energy or clean transportation grants. The other really exciting thing is that, since our system is an off-grid or standalone piece of equipment, and it has this very proven emergency preparedness and resiliency use case, our system, the EV ARC, is actually listed on FEMA's authorized equipment list. So that actually allows customers to utilize emergency preparedness and resiliency funding for our EV ARC systems. And let me tell you, you can't use emergency preparedness and resiliency funding streams on any old EV charger that's next to traditional infrastructure there from that front. And I will also call out that Beam does employ an outside federal funding consultant, so we do offer support for our customers interested in pursuing that there from that side of things as well too. So
Thank you, Andy. Any other questions?
Andy, are you from New York City? You talk faster than anybody I've ever heard.
good ear. I do. I am actually originally from New York City. I grew up in North Jersey, but I've been in San Diego now for about 15 years. What can I say? Old habits die hard from that front. So.
So we got a replay of you. Great stuff. Thank you so much. Any other questions before we break? What time is it, Krista? There you go. All right. All right. So let's enjoy this facility, have some lunch, and break out as we see fit. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.